Welcome to another episode of Overcoming Adversity podcast with Amanda Marino and Sarah Frias as your hosts, powered by Next Level Recovery Associates. This is a mental health and substance use disorder podcast. Today, I have a handsome guest who flew all the way from Nashville, rerouted his planes to come join me today, Mr. Lee Pepper. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I was so happy when we connected and when I was in the airport in Nashville. And I told you that I was on my way to Tampa, to do some work with the guest house. And you were like, oh, my goodness, could you get down to Fort Lauderdale? And I'm like, and what was funny is, Amanda, I knew Southwest could get me there, but I had to check in with my wife, Jennifer, first.
Smart man. Well, thank you. It was the stars aligned for us today.
They really did.
So if you could just introduce yourself for anyone who, I knew of you for many years, but I literally just met you in person for the first time with some wonderful people that we love together,
Yes.
Dear friends who I just sent a selfie of us to. Who are you, Mr. Lee Pepper?
I think most people in the behavioral health industry know me from my work at Foundations Recovery Network. I was the first CIO and then CMO, Chief Information Officer and Chief Marketing Officer for Foundations, and I was there for almost 10 years. And so I really got to know a lot of people in our space through our conferences that we held, in Palm Beach and in San Diego and Dallas and Nashville. And that's really where, for somebody like myself who does not come from a recovery background, but I was so embraced. And I remember John Southworth taking me to my first open meeting.
Yes.
And all the people like Ken and Eric who just really poured into me. And so I think the way that I've approached marketing, I've been able to really maintain some very close personal connections. And I always try to help people when they're reaching out or calling just with ideas, or if they need me to kind of just take a look at something on the side. And so, and then after I left Foundations, I had the opportunity to go work at the Meadows for a few years.
Nice.
And I worked there full time for 2 years and then consulted for another 4. And I stopped working full time, so to speak, though people always laugh that you're really not retired, to work on a book. And so that's one of the things that I was so excited to come and chat with you about my book that's coming out. Absolutely.
Yeah, we talked about that in Arizona, and I was like, ooh, I would love to have you. And I was originally envisioning you on the live stream, but it's so great to have you here in person.
Yes.
So your book is about to come out, or it's out?
It's on pre-sale now, and it'll be in bookstores on September 2nd.
Okay, and what's your book called? And
It's
how
called
can people find it?
It's called Never Outmatched, and it's at all major retailers. I was fortunate when I wrote my book that I was able to find a really good quality publisher, Forefront Books and Mission Driven Press, and it's distributed through Simon & Schuster, so it's everywhere. I was even surprised to see it at Target online the other day, so I'm like, wow, okay, it's not just Amazon.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But then it'll be available, and it's a hardcover book, and it basically covers my military strategies that I employed in my marketing career, because when I was 19 years old, I enlisted in the Army. And so I served 8 years mainly in the reserves. And most of what I learned in the Army, I applied to my corporate career. And so a lot of people, when they ask me about marketing ideas, I'm really just kind of channeling some of these military strategies that I converted to mental models, because it's easier for people to understand. And so this is what the book's about. It's a lot of stories in there from my days at Foundations. So people that know a little bit about Foundations will pick up the book and, I remember that story, or I remember when they did that.
Yeah, I was there.
Yes,
I remember.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is, I had worked at the Breakers for 4 years in my early, my 20s, and I'd watched that conference come, and I'm like, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And when the next thing you know, I was doing that, and then I didn't want to do that anymore, and I did this. So yeah, I watched all of that evolve, and what a cool era to be part of, in this field. Question with just the first thing that comes up to my flexible structure mind is, in the military process of implementing that into marketing, is it rigid? Is it black and white? Is it hardcore? Or is it
I am so glad you asked that question, Amanda. Most people that I come, when I'm speaking to them about these military strategies, they have this idea that it's very rigid and top down. And actually what I lay out in my book is that military strategy it's very creative and very innovative. And that is what served me so well at Foundations. And if you think about it, when you're in the military, you have to have a strategy and you're trained very well. But then when you're in the moment, when you're in the battle, or if you're in some type of training exercise, there's lots of things that are coming out at you that can kind of shift what you were planning.
Yes.
So you have to be innovative and creative in the moment, or you will get overrun, injured, killed. And so a lot of people don't realize how creative the military really is.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of funny because when another podcast just before, we were talking about how when I started my company right before the pandemic, I thought it was a hindrance. But how am I going to build this company with the lockdown? It ended up being my benefit because I leaned into online and became really good at it. So I love that. It's like pivoting, like starting in a crisis. If you can navigate things in a crisis, you can navigate anything.
Oh, you're so right. And when you think about, Amanda, I'm 56. When I graduated college, the internet was not around. I had to turn in my papers on, typing on a typewriter. So I've had to be very innovative and creative my whole career. And I think in behavioral health, we have to be too, because people are consuming information differently now than they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so that's where if you're not open to pivoting, if you don't have within your business, if you don't have the freedom of movement, good military term, then you're going to get left behind. Yeah. And that's where we see, people that will call me today and ask for advice. They're very confused about, well, how is AI going to impact, people finding my business? Well, you better start investigating it now. Just like, you should have been investigating TikTok a couple of years ago
and Instagram
yes.
20 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, I will learn things like when I need to, as far as like certain technology things. But with AI, like that, you brought that up. When I started digging into it, I was like, ooh, this is like easy and it makes my life easier. Like that, why not?
Yes. And I think,
it's not something that's, if you're not a techie person, naturally, like AI can really help make your life easier, especially if you're doing a bunch of different things like I am,
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's great. So that's so funny because my my resistance inside, which is like anti-military, every part of me, like I live a life of flexible structure. Like if I have a plan one day and I decide that I don't want to do that, or something comes up, then that's okay. But I lived at a very rigid way for a long time.
Yes.
And so for me to have like peace and growth and opportunity, I like to go with the flow, like have a plan, but like if it doesn't go exactly like it's okay.
I think what happens is, less than 1% of the American population will serve in the military. And I don't say that as a judgment. It's just where we are in an all-volunteer army. Yeah. But what that means is that 99% of the population don't really have an inkling as to what it means. And so we get influenced by television and movies. And so you see certain movies and televisions, and we develop these cognitive biases about, what is the military? I grew up in a military family. My father was active duty. Both grandparents served. So I understand where that comes from, because you get that kind of archetypal, military father. And a lot of people have that, and they kind of think it's that very rigid. But I was very fortunate that my father, was an officer, and he was very, innovative and creative. And he kind of helped show me some of the ways that it doesn't have to be. The rigidity comes in the training. And I think that is where a lot of our behavioral health facilities could really learn something, because that's where I see some of the weaknesses when you think about compliance and you think about treatment plans. Like, that's where we need to have the rigidity.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to how we communicate with people that are struggling, we need to be real flexible and creative.
We need to do better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love that. And like you think of the term militant. Like, when you think something's militant, that comes from military, and you think it's very rigid. And, and for, like I said, for a long time, that was really worked for me to help me kind of like get on a good path. But then, once I learned self-discipline, now I love that, what are some highlights in the book that you think that would be helpful for? So, I've had my business for 6 years. I'm always trying to be a disruptor. I'm always trying to learn, be open-minded, do better, meet people where they are, learn from my predecessors, but also see what could be done differently to help people. Like, what do you think would be beneficial for someone?
Well, the disruptor thing I love, Amanda. I think that what I've tried to lay out in my book is 12 chapters, and each chapter takes a different strategy or mental model and applies it. So when you think about innovation, we can't command innovation. No. We can't hire somebody and say, oh, Jane or Yasmin, be innovative. Like, it doesn't work that way. What we have to create is an environment, and you create that environment through something called commander's intent. So you have to hire the right people, and you have to give them what the orders are, and they should then read that back to you. It's called a talk back, and that way you understand that they've heard you, and that you also heard them repeat it back. Now they have
interpreted it correctly, the same way, right? Because we can both read something.
It's like the telephone game.
Yes.
And now you've created a structure that says, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I need you to go and research, and within good governance, I need you to go and implement it. That is one of the great things about the military, is that you get that commander's intent, and then you have the freedom of movement, right, to execute on the mission. It's not do this exactly linear the way I'm telling you, because in battle and in training exercise, it never works that way. So that's such new information. I think that part of it alone is like so appealing to me to want to learn more. Yeah.
Because I did not know those things about the military as someone that really doesn't have much military experience. Like for me, it was like very rigid. I'm like, I would have escaped or been dishonorably discharged, like boot camp. Like I would have been like, F you. Like if they took me into a cult, they would have I would have been like an escapee.
What's funny? You might have gotten there, Amanda, and you might have you could have been honor soldier.
Yeah, right. now I have a completely different thought. Like, oh, maybe I didn't have a good inclination. Yeah, no, that's really, really, really interesting. And I, as far as in the company that I own, my co-founder originally, he left after 4 years to pursue different, things that he was passionate about. But his degree was in leadership, and so he helped develop this core leadership style where we stay team focused. Mm-hmm. And if we take good care of our team and every year I ask everybody that's contractors or core team, what did you enjoy that you did this year? What is something you maybe you didn't enjoy, or what would you like to try to learn? Is there another area that we do that you'd love to do more of? And because if I feel like as leaders, if we equipped our people to do what they're great at, do what they love, that they're going to take fantastic care of our clients. And
absolutely.
So that's just something we've always had as our core. I also did companion work and all these other things for other agencies before I started mine. And I was like, some were wonderful and some were god awful, to where I was traumatized. And I'm like, this needs to be better. People need to be treated better. I would never put someone that works with me in a certain situation, Well,
I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've had people recently tell me, oh, I can't work with millennials. And what's funny is, at Foundations, most of my team were millennials. They were a lot younger than I was. But what I find with millennials, if you will set up the environment, if you will express your commander's intent and then not micromanage them, they will go out and do amazing things.
Yes.
And that's where I think that a lot of times we miss out on the opportunity to really learn and then get that leverage, because I hear all this complaining about, well, they won't come in the office, they won't do this and that. And I said, well, I really think it's because your environment is not set up correctly.
Right. You're talking about two completely different viewpoints and values of what work looks like in two very different generations, right? So when I worked with EAPs and unions, I would hear this a lot, the older union guys, they're used to just grinding, and then when the younger person comes in and they don't subscribe to that, they think that they're lazy, and then they think that they're, outdated. So it's trying to help everyone understand one another, respect that if that's what you want to do and that's what fulfills you. But also maybe, the older school person should learn a little more balance and a little more self-care and how to be more efficient. Maybe the millennial, like you said, could be put in the room with these are the tasks. However you get it done and however you want to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Let me know if you need support. That's the way people want to be supported. They want to be heard. They want to be valued.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Well, another thing when I was thinking about when you were talking about disruption, there's another chapter I have on wargaming. And I think this is another important chapter in the book for people that are running small businesses, because a lot of times we do not practice when disruption comes. But in the Army we do. It's called wargaming. We're constantly practicing, and it started out in the 1800s in the Prussian military. They had these sand tables, and they would practice. Well, what if the French do this, or what if the English do this? How do we respond? And the same thing can happen in our corporate world. We have to think about, well, what happens if the server crashes? What happens if my EHR goes down? What happens if the Google algorithm penalizes me? What happens if I lose my legit script? What happens if a competitor shows up?
Yeah.
And we have to, if you will war game, then when those things happen, you can respond much quicker. And I find that younger people, millennials, love those exercises.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely think I started off in the wargaming, right? Starting off in a pandemic on my own, going, okay, well, all of my mentors and teachers are not good to travel. I need to be willing to travel throughout the pandemic. So I feel like that started me in I feel like I'm good in the war game. I'm not good at the little nichey detail stuff. I fall in between millennial and whatever is the other one. I'm 81. So I'm in the middle, and I definitely have traits of both.
Right.
You know, like my sister is a few years younger than me, and she had computers all through school. I didn't have that. It was like right after me. You know, I'm in the beeper era, you know, watch the cell phones come on, like all that stuff. You know, I love that, you know, because, you know, in behavioral health specifically, it's a lot of chaos and a lot of craziness and a lot of things just thrown at you. And you have to have grit.
Absolutely.
And self-care. So what are the 12 chapters? I would just love to know, or what are the important
We'll
ones?
put them in the show notes.
Okay, we'll put them in the show. Okay. So
Was that a good one, Jane? We're giving her some homework to do. Oh my goodness.
So what are so we talked about a couple of them. What are some really ones that come to your mind with, you know, in this connection right now?
One thing that I wanted to say, was this book, I've tried to make it very accessible because it's not just United States military examples, right? Some of these examples I use are thousands of years old. So I will have chapters where I'm talking about Hannibal or Caesar or Joan of Arc or Queen Rani from India. So I've really tried to make it very broad because I want people to understand that it's not a military history book. I'm using some examples from the military, but then I also show how I personally used it. And then I'll have a third and a fourth example in each chapter of how other companies used it and how other companies failed.
Ooh,
so I share the examples of, you know, what happened, you know, with like Kodak and Blockbuster, you know, as failed businesses because they didn't innovate, right? Yeah. And then I also share some other great examples. I think one of the chapters that I'm really proud about is on allies. And this is very important in the recovery space because there are so many, sometimes, you know, we look at it, we're competitors, but I've always found in the behavioral health space that the really good programs, they're cheering as hard for you to be successful as they are for their own companies because they understand that it's the patient that we're most concerned about. Right.
Absolutely.
And if we'll do everything right, our business will be fine, but we've got to make sure we keep our eye on the patients and the families. And I find that is more of a structure you would see in the military with allies versus what you see in the corporate world, where sometimes the deals are all kind of quid pro quo. Well, I'll help you if you help me kind of thing. Whereas I feel like in behavioral health, we are also giving and we because we know that we're helping people.
Yes.
And so I think that this chapter that I wrote on allies, I used some good examples. And a funny one, I don't know if you're a Red Bull consumer, but
not anymore.
Not anymore.
I was once upon a time.
That's another
ago.
episode.
Yeah.
But Red Bull and GoPro, they approach it as allies. They do things to support each other's business without even being paid or having anything contractually. Their marketing, they do a lot of co-branding, and it's really helped propel both of those brands, you know, simultaneously.
I love the Janine. How many times have you heard us talk about collaboration over competition?
Absolutely.
I don't believe there's any competition. And that's something that I've had to evolve into, right? As a young, insecure woman, before I knew who I was and where I stood in the world, like I would look at somebody else's success and make it feel little. I would feel like everybody was a competition. And really, as I've leaned into, you know, myself and I will support and lift up anyone that's doing similar work as mine, any female speakers, and like, especially like I've really leaned into like lifting beautiful, smart, successful women. Like it's a thing because I feel like enough didn't do it for me. So I could go the other way and be like, I'll be the bitch like they were to me. But I choose not to be because the small percentage of people in the world that reach out for help, there is no shortage. There are so many people that still have yet to reach out for help and may not, or unless they come across something, maybe they're listening to this and they hear, oh, I can reach out for help, but there's no competition. There is no competition for me, for Next Level, for my professional speaking, for my brand, for my company, because I am me. And no one can be me. Right. And I will support and lift, and collaborate with anybody. Like I have a hardcore belief system in that. I love that you talk about it. I think it's if you're not in that space in 2025, then you got some work to do.
Yeah. And I think when you go to some of these conferences, I find that some of because, I've worked a lot with private equity. And so, I have seen kind of both sides, and I've always I think in the book, I try to lay out some new language that people that are in the marketing space, like they can use as they're trying to communicate with like their finance department, all right, or with their C-suite or with private equity or whoever their investors are. Because I think that's where sometimes we miss out, because they'll hear something about allies and they'll be like, well, I don't want to support that conference. That's just marketing to marketers. I'm like, well, it could be that we don't want to just waste time, but I find that a lot of it is these are the allies that we are with, and as long as you can document, your plan, like I can be very supportive of that. But I try to give people the language and how to kind of speak into that, so that we're not all of a sudden just being like, well, I'm not going to approve this, I'm not going to approve this, or I don't want to do innovation.
Well, I think and as far as you're using as an example, but it's really been a transition for me, as starting the business when I did, and then, having done so much business to business and doing all events for so long, I made a declaration after the event in the wintertime that I was not going to attend behavioral health conferences, large behavioral health conferences anymore. They're just not I did them for 15 years. They're just not for me. They're not really a good use of my time or my money is for me. And I have a lot of trackable evidence for that. I'm best doing things like this. Right. I'm really good at harnessing and leaning into those relationships, and then also reaching out to the people that I can actually help that don't want anything back, right? The attorneys I work with, and the doctors that really just don't know that there's these other resources out there to help. So, and I also want to reach the people that don't know. I've said this a bunch of times, that don't know that there's help out there, that don't know there's EMDR, that don't know there's treatment. I want to hit them. Yeah, that's who I want to find, and that takes a lot. That's not the quick turnaround. Right. Everyone wants the quick turnaround. I'm in here for the long game.
Well, that's why there's a chapter. We're kind of getting to all the chapters of the book.
We're just evolving naturally.
There's a chapter called Force Multiplication. And it was actually the first chapter I wrote a few years ago for the book. And this was a strategy that I learned at Fort Knox when I was in armor school. And it was a Prussian general, Karl von Clausewitz, that wrote about force multiplication. And basically the way that I transitioned that military strategy into marketing is kind of similar to the podcast example. I use this in my book. If you want to start, if you have to create some marketing, so you have to create some collateral. We need an article on the website as an example. Well, if you're going to go ahead and take the time to hire a copywriter to write the article, you might as well interview some staff and get really good research. And while you're doing that interview, why don't you make that a podcast episode? Amen. And while you're doing the podcast episode, why don't you set up multi-cameras so that way you can now record video? You'll do still photos like Janine just took of us. Now you got a social post. Now all of a sudden that one thing, you had to pay for it anyway, but now you force multiplied it into multiple platforms.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things. And I find that your example is spot on, because we all have different gifts. Some people are great in the room, going to conferences. They want to set up the booth and do all that. That's fine. Others are like what you're doing here, where you're reaching a whole new audience, digitally, and probably even a greater audience as far as the diversity and geography now, because people can watch this and consume it when they want to. Right. So I find so force multiplication is a really important chapter in my book, and I think it will resonate with people. And then the key is, once you've done that, now all of a sudden, instead of spending, say, $2,000 to write that one article, you now might have added on a little bit of expense with time to do now all of a sudden maybe you're in for $3,000, but now you're on 5 platforms instead of paying for it individually. Because a lot of the clients, when they call me, something's not going right. And when I start looking at their budgets and what they're spending, I'll see okay, so they spent a couple thousand on the podcast, a couple thousand on the video, a couple thousand on the article, social media is a couple thousand. And I'm like,
All can be
wow,
one.
it all can be one, or at least you can get some more leverage.
Now, my beautiful Janine, she also provides clips.
Yes.
At the end, so we can repurpose.
Yes.
We were big repurposers.
I started following you, when I first met you a few months ago. And so you guys are doing a great job. That's why when I showed up in the lobby earlier, I made sure that Nicole got me Yasmin's contact. And I'm so glad to meet you too, Janine, because
you ever want to record when you're here, hit Janine up. She's awesome.
And I wanted to throw this out, Amanda, because, everybody's asking me about AI. Like pretty much every day I'm on a call with some, we call them prospecting calls. People are reaching out, hey, and usually the first second questions now is AI. And what I am trying to explain around AI is that, when you're looking at, like, there's the AI tools, which we're all using, like whether you're using it for clips or, for developing a plan or whatever.
Zoom transcription notes.
But what's fascinating about AI, it's basically the power in the supercomputers that are powering it. They're now able to reach so many different platforms. So now if your treatment center is not on YouTube, if you're not doing a podcast, if you don't have a good blog, if you're not doing all these platforms, AI can now search through AI, can now touch all those. Whereas before with Google search, it was just crawling your website.
Yeah.
Now the supercomputing power of AI, we're now able to bring in, and we are, they just were at Google just had a big conference, and they talked about that they are now going through and indexing every podcast. Even if your podcast is not, the Oprah Winfrey podcast,
right.
It's still getting indexed, and all that is feeding into our search results.
Absolutely.
And it's going to disrupt a lot of businesses, and especially behavioral health.
Love that word.
Yep.
I love that. If I may, as your producer, chime in. I'm on the microphone over here.
Chime in, love.
I use AI in every aspect of my business when it comes to podcast production. And it was a lot of resistance a few years back when it first came out. But I truly believe that AI technology is the new social media. If you don't get into it now and learn it, you miss the boat.
Just like the social media is like the new SEO. Like I think all of it is important. But yes, it is, and people are scared of it. I don't think it's going to replace me. It can't. It's not me. But I can make a version of me that'll answer questions like me.
Yeah.
And so I have been blessed that I have a dear friend that's a huge international speaker on AI. His name's Phil Stringer.
Okay.
If you want to look him up. So he got me and taught me so much, and he gives people like these 10 toolkits. But yeah, behavioral health, first of all, they're not even doing social media. So they sure as heck aren't going to do AI. But if you are hearing this and you do want to be an innovator and you do want to get ahead of the game, not tomorrow, not next year when you have time, this is the shit that you should be paying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, a lot of people got caught flat-footed a few years ago with Siri and Alexa. And what was interesting is we were seeing because Google will give you so many search terms, and we were already seeing the search terms come in where it would say, hey, Alexa, find me a treatment center, or hey, Siri, find me a treatment. We were seeing that coming through.
Yep.
And then the same thing with local search, where people were now searching alcohol treatment near me. A lot of people were flat-footed. They didn't understand that you had to architect your business to be able to show. And it's the same thing with AI. It's happening now. I've got a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old.
You met my 19-year-old out in the lobby.
That's right.
He's almost 20.
Yeah, he was so kind and so respectful too. I love when people give me feedback on my kids. So you've done a really great job with him.
Thank you.
And if I ever have a heart attack and I need an EMT, I hope I can call him.
Or you need an adolescent transport or a second chair for a young adult. He's trained.
I love that he's getting into that business. That's good.
Yeah, it was his choice.
Yeah,
but yes, you have back to you. I didn't make it about me.
No. I love the personal connection, Joe. That's what this is so important in this business. But if you're not architecting your business now to take advantage of AI, because my 18 and my 20-year-old, they're not going to Google search like what you and I did and still do somewhat. They are in the different AI bots, and they are doing that. They're like, hey, what's this top show? Or, what's the best treatment, right? Or what's the best whatever.
Yeah, and you have to. I mean, to get the best version, obviously you have to have a paid version, and it's not very expensive to get to add to your repertoire of things that you pay every month as a small business or a large business. They are not going to make or break you, but they will make or break you with efficiency, time, and productivity.
Absolutely.
I love that. And so for you to stay been doing what you've been doing for so long. So you are the epitome of what someone doesn't like. You are definitely constantly innovating. I see that. I feel that. I hear that. Like, what do you think is the difference with people that kind of get stuck in the old ways and don't want to evolve? Like, we even talked about some of the brands like Kodak and Blockbuster. Like, what gives you the oomph to keep going? Is it just part of your genetic, or like what? Like,
that's a good question, Amanda. It's funny. My wife was telling my boys during Father's Day, recently.
Oh, happy Father's Day!
Oh, thank you. We were talking about, because I'm very outgoing and kind of gregarious at times. And when I was a young kid, I was in a children's hospital for 6 months. I had a tumor on my spine, and so when I was very young, I was around a lot of doctors and nurses because I was hospitalized for so long. And my wife was telling my sons this story, because I'm sure they've heard it, but they've never really talked about it too much.
Right.
But my wife was telling that story. And so there was something about, again, kind of pouring into me. And I think that kind of allowed me then to have the kind of a different perspective. Like, I'm not afraid to talk to people. And having that so I'm always looking for new things. And when I got to Foundations, that was where I knew the status quo. I was not hired to do the status quo, right? And so when I first got there, they were spending $1 million on the yellow pages, right?
That's where I found treatment.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah.
There was no Google and all that. But yeah, I mean, for anyone that doesn't know about Foundations was legit like the gangster of the field, really had everything on lock as far as reputation, quality of care, the best people, the best team, the best events. I mean, it really was, you did
Very
a great
special.
job. You did a great job,
Thank you.
And I know that nothing lasts forever, right?
Right.
But it was in its time and in its height of that time, it was really just like pretty far above the rest.
Well, and people ask me, and I think that gets to the kind of the crux of your question, is that it is within all of us. That's why I titled the book Never Outmatched. The very first chapter is Never Be Outmatched. And when you're hired into a role, whether it's a small business, whether it's behavioral health, you have to understand that you were hired not to babysit somebody else's program, not to babysit somebody else's processes, right? It's within you to innovate, to lead. And so you have to make the decision internally that you are never going to be outmatched. And that's the attitude that I've always had. And that's why I titled the book that, because I don't know everything. Things are changing, things are disrupting, but I'm always going to figure it out. I'm going to spend the time to find the right experts to connect with or do my own research. I'm going to test, right? I'm going to try to figure out how to innovate. And that I believe is within all of us. But the question is going to be, no matter if you don't have scope, if you don't have budget, if you don't have schedule, you still have it within you to do it. You can figure things out.
But not everyone has, and I relate to you a lot. I feel like we have a lot of that in common. Like, not everyone has that curiosity, that desire to continue to learn and to continue to grow and to continue to expand. That we probably all have it within us. Yeah. But a lot of people are held back by fear of the and that's probably why a lot of people don't do the change. It's probably answering my own question. Like, the fear holds so many, like, people, when I opened my own business, people were like, oh my God, it was some magical thing. There was no magic. I had an idea. I believed in it. I tried. I figured, what's my worst thing worst thing that can happen is I have to get another job. Okay. And I did it anyways with the fear. That's literally it. And what keeps me going. And I get knocked down. I asked my son as a joke, I say, what's it like to be loved by everyone? Because he's literally across the board. Everyone adores him. Teachers,
yeah, you
bosses.
can see it in his eyes. Yeah.
And I've been through eras of being hated on, So and I love that for my kids. They have a very different experience than I do. But what's it like to be loved? Because I've been knocked down so many freaking times. But tell me I can't do something. Tell me I can't do it, and I will show your ass.
Yeah.
So it might hurt, and I might take it in, but then I want to come back yeah, I'm going to do it.
I think there's two things with that, Amanda. I think that we have to make sure as leaders and as business owners that we're putting people in the right place. I have been involved in a lot of consulting because, people will call me and I'll come in and consult. And a lot of times they have the wrong people they've got good people, but they're in the wrong seats.
Yes.
So it's important to make sure you have the person that's in the right place. And then the second thing, I think it's a similar journey to people in recovery. Not everybody gets it the first time. And I think that for most people I know that have been successful in their sobriety, like there does become that aha moment, and all of a sudden they get that confidence. And I think that that's some of what you might see in some of your younger marketers, your younger leaders. They haven't quite maybe got that inner confidence yet, but it is available to them. I can't predict when they'll take advantage of it, but if you'll create the environment, I think you'll have a better chance of getting that out of them.
Absolutely. No, I try to, when I identify like a coach that maybe, needs a little bit of work on their own confidence or esteem, because I can see it in how they're working with a client. I can see it, I try to find ways like, maybe send them to a course or recommend something, because I wasn't born to have confidence. I mean, I wasn't raised to have confidence, right? And I think a lot of people have poor self-esteem. And listen, there's days that mine's in the gutter still, but I still, like you said, I do believe it is in there for everybody, but you have to believe that it's in there for yourself.
Yeah.
No one's going to do some of this stuff for you. No one's going to walk through the dark times and the ugly times and have to create and innovate, besides you.
Yeah,
and your higher power,
right.
That's at the end of the day, that's
right.
it, and your family, I just feel like I've learned just so much the past few years about who I am and where I want to go. And one of my goals was something that we both have in common. We both have booked TEDx's.
Yes.
So yours
Thank you for breaking. Yes,
yours is in Ocala. What month?
November 7th and 8th, TEDx Ocala.
Awesome.
And I just saw your social post that I think Yasmin created it. It was so wonderful.
Manila, Philippines.
So exciting.
My son's graduation present. He wanted to go to Asia, so now we're going to go to Philippines, Thailand, and he wants Japan, so I think we're going to try to get Japan in there. So I've just booked that, and I've been working on it for a year. And I was watching everybody in my mastermind group book theirs, and I was sharing.
I had given up. I had applied to so many, and you don't hear back, and you don't get any feedback, and I'm like, well, I guess they don't like me. And all of a sudden and then you found out, I think the same within a day or two when I found out.
Yeah. This is the thing. It's like you said, like the allies and the pouring into. I was the biggest cheerleader for everyone I knew that got one, shared theirs, reshared it, sent it to people, celebrated them. And I was like kind of getting frustrated because I'm used to things not taking so long. Like I really put a lot of time and work and money into this. And then like I shared that with like people, and then poof, a week later, boom, booked it. And I was just like, and I get to have a whole experience. So it's pretty cool.
Amanda, for you, and I've known you, I guess, for 3 or 4 months now, but I was just on a podcast with Brand Builders Group. They have the Influential Personal Brand podcast. And Amanda Vaden, who was interviewing me that day, she asked me about influencer. And I told her, and I said, and this is what I see in you. I said, I don't consider myself an influencer, but I consider myself influential because I'm so giving. I'm always trying to give. I'm not necessarily trying to receive all the time. I'm trying to how can I help you? How can I help you? And I feel like that's where you are. And now all of a sudden the universe is now, has now returned, TEDx Manila for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing, I think, for treatment centers to understand, because there's a lot of vanity metrics out there. Yeah. And a lot of times people will call me and like, well, I don't understand. I've got 100,000 subscribers on my YouTube, but my center's not full. And I'm like, well, that's where you've gotten stuck on this influencer vanity metric side instead of trying to produce content that's going to be influential. Yes. What are you doing to help people versus just trying to gather followers?
God, I love you.
Yeah.
You so speak my language.
Yeah. I guess Ken and Eric knew something when I showed up there that morning to have coffee with them, and you were right there too.
Because you were going to go and meet up with them later, and I said, sit down.
Absolutely,
absolutely. Who's this guy? So, well, I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
You bring in the thunder today, and God, we have so much in common as far as like belief systems, and I feel like that's a one-up for me because I think you're incredible and you're a badass.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm really excited to check out your book. So how do people find you, Mr. Lee Pepper?
So it's available on pre-sale now, Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart pre-sale. It'll be available in bookstores on September 2nd. If you want to order it, you can go to neveroutmatchedbook.com. If you order it, and that's got all the links, you can also get some of the pre-sale offers I've got. So you can get an advanced copy PDF. You'll get a mini quote book. You'll get access to some other, freebies, after you buy the hardback.
And besides your book, so you look out for the TEDx Ocala to, hit the YouTube live when it goes.
I am out on the speaking circuit, so I'm going to be speaking in Charlotte next week.
Awesome.
For the Blanchard Institute. So shout out to Ward Blanchard and their team there. They run a great outpatient program there in Charlotte. And then I'm just getting booked for TCV IV in Arizona in December. So part of what, as the book kind of comes out, like there's more and more speaking. So you can keep up with all that if you follow me on any of my socials. So people can connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok even.
Yeah.
My boys still can't believe that I've got a TikTok account. They're like, oh my goodness.
I have it. I just honestly, I don't go on it because it's overwhelming to my brain.
It can become overwhelming.
I will make whatever I need to make, and then me and Yasmin will, put it together.
You've got a great team to help with that, or else, you'll be like me, lose all your hair.
Well, it's been such a joy and a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Lee, for coming from Nashville and rerouting from Ocala and doing all the stuff to get here. I feel like this was magic in the making. And you can find our podcast on all streaming platforms. You can find Next Level Recovery Associates on all your socials, nextlevelra.com, AmandaMarinoSpeaks.com. And thank you so much for being here. Thanks, Lee. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. We love you.